April 4th, 2019, regular meeting of the Village of Pinehurst Planning and Zoning Board to order. And here comes Joel. Good afternoon, sir. Easy, girl. First order of business would be the approval of the minutes of the March 7th, 2019 meeting. I assume everyone received those minutes in their packet. Any comments, questions, amendments, etc.? For those of you that came in late, we're looking at the minutes of the March 7th meeting. Anyone have any comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes of March 7th, 2019 Planning and Zoning Board. Have a motion? Motion by Joel, second.
Second.
Second by Cindy. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. The minutes of March 7th are approved. New business. We do not have any real new business in terms of applications to consider this month. However, a couple of comments are in order. I just want to take a couple of minutes to fill in the board, in addition to the members of the square foot subcommittee and the audience, as to where we are and what we're doing and what we have done. In the past month or so, we have talked with various individuals in the community, builders, developers, real estate people, other planning type individuals in the area. We've also solicited information from other municipalities in our peer group relating to the particular situation we're studying. Some we have heard back from, some we have not heard back from. We still have more people to, I'll say, interview on this item, both locally, and when I say locally, I mean Pinehurst, as well as in our adjoining communities. And that's about all I have to say as to that situation right now. If anybody on the committee wants to add something, please go ahead.
I've just been surprised at the lack of size in other communities.
In a lot of communities, in our peer group especially, don't concern themselves with square feet of living units as far as apartments, condos, or townhouses are concerned. They're more concerned with density, setbacks, and building heights. And so that's something we are also looking into in more detail. There are other communities such as Hilton Head and Williamsburg that we have contacted. We have not received a great deal of information from Hilton Head, but I don't know if we got anything in from Williamsburg yet.
Williamsburg is I believe, the one town on our list that we have not heard anything back from. But just for those in attendance, the cities that we have polled and we have reached out to include our neighbors, Southern Pines, Chapel Hill, Davidson, Cornelius, of course, all in North Carolina, Coral Springs, Florida, Fort Collins, Colorado, Germantown, Tennessee, and Leo did mention Hilton Head, South Carolina.
Thanks, Alex. And we do need to set up another date for the subcommittee meeting, and I'd like to do that today. And I'm going to throw out a bunch of dates, and we'll see which one sticks with most of the people. March 10th. How about April? April 10th.
What time are you looking at?
What time is convenient to you? 4 o'clock? Is that okay with everybody? All right, then it's April 10th, 4 o'clock.
I will add, too, that you guys in attendance do not forget that our volunteer luncheon is scheduled that day, of course, at the Fair Barn, so you guys can get a nice full meal and then come discuss some business at the village after a nap.
Have time to take a nap and all, okay. All right.
Alex, do we have any feedback from the master plan process of where they are or where we are in that? Because we were kind of trying to stay in line with that with this discussion, if I remember right.
Personally don't have an update. There is a specific timeline that has been was presented to council, and I think Jane might be able to help me specifically. About a month ago, I believe, in one of the early March meetings with council, by the timeline of what we're expected to sort of have a draft that would be rolled out to members of the public as well as you guys. Keep in mind, though, the comprehensive plans, they're not really going to give specifics as far as dimensions, really numerical specifics in order. Like, you guys should have keep a 1,500 minimum heated square footage, or you should look at a 600, a 1,300, or anything like that. But I don't have that timeline in front of me, but we do have one. Staff has a timeline and when we expect to have a draft out for review.
But our idea was, since we make our decisions based on an integration of those two documents, that if there were no areas zoned for high density or whatever we're looking at here, then it becomes moot. At least that's the way it worked in my head.
And not necessarily. Big picture, the general statute specifically state that if a proposed text or map amendment is to go forward and be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Board first before adoption by the government board, which in this case is the Village Council, that a consistency statement also be adopted with the long-range comprehensive plan. That's it. It just has to be a consistency statement adopted. Whether
They
that means
ought to line up with each other.
ideally, but sometimes
Like if we start saying, hey, we really need to have some things in the PDO that talk about 80-story high rises, that wouldn't make a lot of sense because we don't have that.
Well, there again, it does give the levity that if your specific municipality, county, et cetera's long-range comprehensive plan could be completely contrary to what the proposal is, but you could still adopt an amendment based on whatever evidence you have in front of you, hearing from the community, hearing from anyone else, and therefore that comprehensive plan would there be amended. So to your point, you spend money, you hire consultants, you have this plan in front of you, you have draft forms that are rolled out for members of the public, you guys, the village council, who ultimately adopts a plan in the hopes that it lays a framework for you and that you don't 2-3 years later have something that is, again, completely contrary to what that long-range comprehensive plan said.
Right. The two
That's the
things,
intent of it.
the
But
two
there-
things should work with each other.
And then we all know in a perfect world.
Oh, sure, there's going to be challenges, but I mean, in general, they ought to work with each other. And those are the
Sure.
two documents we use
And-
to do our job.
And I think my understanding was that you guys were not charged with charging forward necessarily with this, with any specific text amendment proposal, and not being in a hurry. So it may very well be a possible amendment before this board following an adoption of a new long-range comprehensive plan, or not. I think the timing's going to align that I don't think we're going to see a text amendment come before the board until after we see a comprehensive plan, to your point.
That was the idea that I thought we discussed when we were in the public meeting, in the public hearing.
and I think
That's, my memory says
and I-
that's how it worked.
And I think the
That
motion
the
that you
comprehensive
crafted.
plan would be adopted first, and then sometime after that, we're working, trying to keep up with it.
And I
But
think,
we don't precede it. The cart doesn't come before the horse, in other words. That's what I remember.
and I remember that you were I'm going to pin you as the wordsmith with that motion, if I recollect.
That may
I don't
be why
think
I
you made the
remember it.
motion, but you.
That
you
may be why I
crafted it.
remember it.
That's right. And yeah, I think the language was such that it would, basically have input from that process with this decision as well.
And that process is still working where the public attends hearings and can discuss what's in the master plan.
Absolutely.
I keep calling it the master plan. It's got another name.
Long-range comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
So yeah, there'll be adequate time to view that as well with what other information the subcommittee and staff can provide before the full board.
Okay, thanks.
Just let me say something first, then you go. We're going to be cutting this meeting off at about 25 after 4 because there will be a Board of Adjustment meeting for a variance hearing. I don't know if anyone is here yet for that particular meeting or hearing, but we'll continue it to about 4:25. Joel, you had a comment?
I'm wondering regarding this, are there communities that those of you in the audience may have thought about that perhaps we should consult with on what their ordinance is regarding square footage? If any of you have looked into that to that extent, as to what you'd like us to think about.
If someone does have some opinions about that, as I said, we're going to cut things off at 4:25, so it doesn't take a long time. Please let us have your thoughts. Yes, sir? Yes, ma'am?
I'm just curious what you are asking these municipalities that you're reaching out to. What are you asking these different communities, and how are the questions phrased?
What I'm asking is just from a point of curiosity. A number of you have looked at this over a period of time, and I'm wondering if you have some communities that you feel...
I understand your question, but I'm curious, what is the question you are asking the communities that you're reaching out to?
The basic question we're asking is, how do they control heated square footage of apartments, condominiums, townhouses?
I would include density and scale as
I
well.
would
with that.
say that's an unusual question to ask, because you could go online and look at their zoning and see what their density...
Let me just clarify my question. I don't have a problem understanding what I think we should look at. I'm trying to sit here and ask you, are there communities that you would like us to look at regarding the size of, the minimum size, so that we listen to what you want? What I often hear is, well, that community is not similar to ours. So I'm just, if you make that statement, and I'm saying you make it in a very positive way, then what are you comparing that to? And if anybody has that as a thought, I'd like us to hear what communities you would like us to look at that perhaps we haven't thought about. Don't mean for a minute that we haven't thought about this a great deal. I just don't want to miss something that you want us to look at. And whenever this comes to fruition, we have missed a community that you recognized was similar to us that had guidelines that we should be looking at. I have no hidden agenda here.
No, Hilton Head and Williamsburg are two good examples as far as I was concerned. But I do agree with your planner that it's an unusual question to ask because most people phrase it or approach it not from a square footage point of view, but from a density point of view. That's
Thank
all.
you.
Good afternoon. One thing I'd like to ask this
Can
committee.
we ask your name, sir?
Oh, sure. I'm Bill Keith. I live over in Village Acres. I'm the president of the Property Owners Association over there, by default. But anyway, I am.
Thank you.
What I'd like to ask this committee to do is, in whatever documentation we finally arrive at and agree upon, we need to first define the definition of heated square footage. This is the fourth state I've lived in, the seventh community that I've lived in, and everyone regards it differently. Now, I've been in places where square footage is considered to be square footage of living space, which did not include closets, hallways, heated garages, or anything like that. I've also lived in places where they considered everything under air or everything that's under heat. But without some definition in the documentation, we don't really know what we're talking about. I've got an 1,805 square foot house. I've also got a 450 square foot heated garage with plumbing and electricity in it that's insulated. Do I have a 2,200 square foot house or do I have an 1,800 square foot house? We weren't very well defined in what we did with the thing down the street here. I think we need a firm definition of what we're talking about when we talk about square footage. Is it heated and or air-conditioned square footage that's living space to include or not include hallways, closets, and things like that, to include or not include garage spaces, storage spaces, unfinished basements that are heated? We just need a definition.
That was a very popular question after the Greens was approved. And local resident asked the question to have that better defined in the PDO, which was taken up about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Alex?
I think you're right on it.
And we do have a definition now for heated square feet.
Is that public someplace? Where
Yes.
where might we look that up?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the latest copy.
Okay, all right, so we define,
Okay. Well, Alex has got it.
I got it right here. So we define in our development ordinance, heated square feet as, heated square feet of a dwelling unit is space that is intended for occupancy that is heated by a conventional heating system or systems that are permanently installed. And this went through the same process as any proposal that the subcommittee is working on as a text amendment. So it was duly advertised as a public hearing before this board, and then once again duly advertised before a public hearing of village council, and then ultimately adopted about year and a half ago, like Leo said with this timeline.
Does that include or exclude closets, storage spaces, hallways, and things like that?
I would include that as living area, which would be included in that.
Okay, because a number of places I've been figured that people didn't live in the closets, but we'll leave it go at that. So we do have a definition.
Yes, sir.
And that applies to both single-family and multifamily residents?
Any residential use?
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you.
Okay, it's Colette Klinsky, and I'll bring it up again because this time we're at least on camera.
Just give us your name, please, ma'am.
I did, Colette Klinsky,
Oh, I did, I'm sorry.
Pinehurst, Queens Court. Everybody keeps questioning it, and I've noticed that you mentioned heated square footage, and then the next person will stand up and say square footage without the heated, and there is a difference, and I want everybody to make sure they're aware of ANSI Standard Z765, which our state says they follow, and that defines very specifically living square footage. Living square footage is really not an acceptable term. Heated square footage is, as long as you keep holding everybody's feet to the fire, that's what they're talking about, is heated square footage and not square footage just without the heated. There is a world of difference, and ANSI Standard Z765 defines it very specifically, unless you guys don't want to follow that standard, but it is mentioned in North Carolina Real Estate Commission that they do follow it, and Realtor.com in their Code of Ethics says they follow that standard too. Or American Standard is another acceptable standard. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be quick, Leo. I understand you're moving ahead. John Strickland, in answer to Commissioner Schreiberg, I would think Carmel, California, would be an area we'd want to look at, and any other community that is a residential resort community. And I would think that some of the names that were mentioned earlier, while I know they are included in the general comparisons that Pinehurst does to communities across the state, I'm not sure that all of those fit in this study of minimum square footage. But certainly Carmel, California, and residential resort communities wherever they are. And in following up on Commissioner Kelly's point, I guess the summary at this point would be that the committee is continuing to do its work. It's not on hold pending the long-range plan. It's continuing to do research, as you've discussed today, and that's going to continue for the next few months. Is that
We have monthly meetings, yeah, and we'll continue it till we get it done.
okay? And as we picked up from last month, will the minutes of those meetings be included in your monthly statement? They weren't this month.
No, they'll be online.
In a separate entity, not under planning and zoning, or how would we access that? Last month, they were included in your agenda for your last month's meeting. So the minutes of the committee meeting, or subcommittee as you call it, would be attached, I would think, to your normal agenda for each month?
I'm going to ask Alex to clarify that.
The direction we were given is that these are notes, as they are not minutes
Yeah.
of a board or a committee. But if you hover over on the village main homepage and you go under boards and commissions, planning and zoning board,
Right.
and then a tab to the right, there's a specific link that says the subcommittee for minimum heated square footage.
Okay.
And you click on that, and I believe the January, February, and March. Last update I heard last week that all three should be up there. And if you have any trouble finding those,
Okay.
just let me know.
So that would be the way to access them, not necessarily through your monthly
That's correct.
agenda, as in February?
That's the direction we've been given, yes.
Okay. And finally, there was an inquiry, not by me, made of the village attorney on this issue of open meetings or not. That was about 10 days ago. I would assume that he would be responding on that in due course. And if in fact it's true that those are open meetings, then the public would be allowed to attend those, if that's what he determines.
If
You're
that's
not-
what he
I
says
just-
the law is, that's what we'll have to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Before we adjourn the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, one other item I want to bring up to the attention of the board. The North Carolina General Assembly on March 26, 2019, actually the Senate filed a bill that they call a short title, Clarify Property Owners' Rights. And the title is a bill to be entitled, an act providing that counties and cities shall not adopt ordinances regulating the removal of trees from private property without the express authorization of the General Assembly. This is not April 1st, folks. It is what it is. There was a subcommittee of P&Z working on a clear-cutting ordinance, or the prohibition of clear-cutting. We're now dead in the water, and until there's more clarification as what this bill really means, we're dead in the water. All right, it's 4:25. I need a motion to adjourn the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board of April 4th, 2019.
So moved.
Motion by Mike Morris, second. Second by Chuck Russell. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting's adjourned, and we'll now have to